John McMullen on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline joins us now here on the Sports Bash. John, by the way, when we say that, like, training camp is done, but they're still practicing and they're still getting ready for games. What is the difference between what training camp is and what they are doing now?
There's no difference from their standpoint. The difference is they get to close practices, though. So we don't get to watch them. We only get to watch the first 15 minutes or so, individual drills, a little bit of maybe install, and that's it. They kick us out. Whereas in training camp, we get to watch the entire practice. So that's the major difference.
So they like training camp being over.
Yeah, well, so do we. We do, but for different reasons. We like training camps over because there's no more fans there, so we can see better. But it's a catch-22 because there's not much to see.
That there's a lot to discuss, though, and that I guess we start with the quarterback situation and what you got to garner from what you saw. Carson Wentz kind of non-committal when he was asked about his status. He says it's going to be close. Is that his way of winking and nodding and saying, I'll be ready?
Yeah, I mean, from his standpoint, he thought he'd be ready for quite a long time. And so have I, and that's part of the reason because he's so confident about it. But ultimately, he's been very consistent. So has Doug. So has the entire organization. It's not their decision. It's the medical staff's decision. And the last hurdle is to be cleared for contact. And I think he's very, very confident that that's going to happen. And Mike Rowe, the offensive coordinator, spoke today. And he mentioned when someone asked, when you're cleared, you're cleared. There's no you're cleared but. And what that means is when he's cleared, Carson Wentz is going to play, and he's going to be the starting quarterback. So none of that has really changed. The fact that he went on a Philadelphia area radio station last week and said it was going to be close, and he reiterated that today, it's always been the same. We've always known it was going to be close. And if you read 973ESPN.com, the week after the surgery, I explained the timeline. And September 13th is 9 months. That's the timeline. The week 1 is September 6th. It was always going to be close.
Mm-hmm. The one thing you wrote about today that he kind of stands alone now. He's at the top of the depth chart, and it appears that because over the weekend it was reported that he was going to resume 11 on 11s, and that wasn't like earth-shattering news, but, it was the fact that he's now doing something more. Now, he split time with Foles the other day, correct?
Yeah, he split time 50-50, and that's how they're going to go about it until Carson gets cleared. Because they have to have the safety net. They have to prepare both in case Carson is not cleared by the doctors, then you have to have Nick ready. So it's probably not the best way to go about things. It's not the typical way you want to go about things in the NFL. You want the starting quarterback to get most of the reps, but that's where the Eagles are. That's kind of how they have to do it. And there's still time. We're over 2 weeks away from the opener. So there's a potential possibility that Carson won't be there. I think it lowers every day. And in that case, though, you have to be prepared for it and have Nick ready.
John, coming off Thursday's performance with Foles, I mean, he looked brutal, just to put it politely.
He was very Oakland Raider-esque.
Yeah, that's as nice as we're going to be about him. So, I mean, is there any cause for concern with him moving forward, or is that just a relax, it's preseason type of deal?
No, did you watch him play against Oakland and Dallas at the end of the regular season? He looked every bit as bad.
I did, unfortunately.
Nick Foles is.
Right.
Yeah. Nick Foles is a streak guy. He's a streak shooter. I always compare him to a streak shooter in the NBA. That's what he is. If he plays over a long period of time, you're going to have those tremendous highs, like 7 touchdowns and winning a Super Bowl, and you're going to have those tremendous lows where he looks like the worst quarterback in the world. That's who Nick Foles is. So I'm not concerned, and part of it was the fact that, you know, Big V, I was going to say his name, but I lost it. He
got a little stage fright. A little stage fright?
No, not stage fright. Halapuli Vati Vaitai. See, I can get it out as long as I slow down a little bit. But he was doing his best impression of a turnstile. He admitted that was the worst game he's played as a professional since the first game he played when he was forced into action as a rookie to replace Lane Johnson. He was just terrible. So that was part of it as well.
You know, I have been kind of a Nate Sudfeld fan. I like what I've seen from Sudfeld, you know, going back to last year in the few, you know, he got a little reps against the Cowboys in that game. And I had always said whether they dealt Foles or not had nothing to do with Foles so much or Wentz. More so, did they trust Nate Sudfeld? Like, do they think that they saw enough from Sudfeld last year to say, we feel comfortable trading Nick Foles? If that scenario came up now, do you think they feel comfortable enough with Nate Sudfeld if somebody called them for Foles at this stage of the game?
Yes, I do, because I do think he's kind of proven he could be a solid backup quarterback in this league. And I don't know, you know, the Eagles have always thought highly of him, and they always thought he had potential. But I don't know how they could have known until they saw him with these extra reps, not only in the games, but in practice as well. Because remember, he was last year in training camp, he was still with the Redskins. And then he came here and he was on the practice squad until the Colts tried to sign him, and the Eagles promoted him late. So they didn't get a ton of looks at him other than the fact that they knew they liked his skill set. So this was a very important offseason for him. I think he's proved a lot of things to the Eagles. And now, yeah, I mean, I think if Howie Roseman got to revisit, and you know, Mike, I've always said I think he overreached on Nick Foles. If you give me 2 second-round picks, heck, I'd go with Nate Sudfeld as a backup.
So is moving Foles in your mind now again? Because you had always said, well, if you don't trade him at the draft, things could happen. Is it a viable possibility where we stand right now?
No, I think it's less of a possibility now for the opposite reason of what we were looking for, and the fact that it's Nick that got hurt. So it's Nick that got the shoulder strain. And we'll see if he plays against Cleveland on Thursday and proves he's healthy. Maybe things change if there's an injury elsewhere. But right now, the rest of the league sees that play and sees that he got banged up, and they're going to start asking questions about his health. So instead of you were looking for injuries elsewhere, and now it's not a serious injury. Obviously, he's already back at practice. But just because you're doing some things, and again, we're not able to watch the entire practice, so we don't know if Nick is limited because the Eagles don't have to give us that information this time of year. So unless other teams see he's completely healthy and check out that shoulder, it makes it less likely.
So, John, having said all that with Foles, what could the Eagles get for him now? Did they already pass up on the best possible deal that they could have got for him a month or so ago?
I think they did. But you never know when desperation arises, and it happened with Sam Bradford, we all know. And the Vikings overreached and gave more than they should have. If another scenario like that develops somewhere else, again, odds-wise, it's very unlikely, but it could have raised the price out of desperation. But as far as value, I always talk about teams around this league and fans have a difficult time understanding this. I love Nick Foles. I think he's the best backup quarterback in football. He's a heck of a nice guy. But these teams are looking at film from every game, not just the Patriots and Vikings. They're looking at those Raiders tapes, and they're looking at those Cowboys tapes, and they're looking at the year in Los Angeles. They're looking at all that stuff.
Not to mention, John, to think that the perfect storm is going to happen again, that you're going to have to use him to get you through the playoffs again and win another Super Bowl, I think is just being unrealistic. I mean, the perfect storm has already occurred.
For Sam Bradford, it's probably not going to happen again.
Right. The perfect storm for Nick Foles has already occurred. To hold on to him, hoping that same exact moment comes up again, I think they overlooked that situation. And you can give Roseman a lot of praise. I think he misplayed his hand on this one.
Yeah, I've said it from the start. I agree with you. I've said he should have traded him at his highest value, because the realization is you can't pay him for next year. So he's going to be gone. And from that standpoint, you want to get the value while you can. Now, the other side of the argument is you're still a significant Super Bowl contender, and you want to load up when the window is open. And perhaps they do need him again, but as you mentioned, the odds of that are going to be very unlikely, that they're in a similar type position. So I think you have to weigh. Everything's a cost-benefit analysis. I think you have to weigh it. And from the Eagles' perspective, I would have dealt him, because you're in a position where Carson Wentz is your franchise quarterback. You have a developmental guy you like in Nate Sudfeld. And you sort of have to weigh the rest of the roster. And if you can add something of significance down the line as far as draft picks, I thought that would have been the right way to go.
Yeah. Foles, Sudfeld is not going to pass Foles on the depth chart, but how close are those two?
No, they're not close. I mean, you can't get – Nick has proven, and as I said, he's the best backup quarterback in this league, and he deserves to be a starter. He'd be, if you're going to rate the starters in this league, he'd be in the 20s. That's where he'd be. And Nate, hey, I think Nate's proven that you might be able to call him the best third-string quarterback in football. That's how strong the Eagles' quarterback room is. But, no, those two players are not close at this standpoint.
Yeah, you know, and the one thing about Nate Sudfeld, people, just to give you a little back, I mean, he is a fifth-round pick sixth-round pick from Indiana with the Redskins. This is his third year in the league, so he's relatively and I think Mike Rowe talked about this the other day, that, look, he's somewhat of a young player. He's not – these reps are really helping him out. He's getting the chance to run the offense against the Patriots the other night, and he has handled that pretty well. So the Eagles – probably feel pretty comfortable if they had to turn to him. However, that doesn't, much like Nick Foles, anytime you turn to the backup, it doesn't guarantee that your season is going to be saved.
No. But when you're talking about, when you're down to that, and I talked about this last week when you were gone, Mike, I mean, the Eagles are one of the few teams in this league, when it looked bad on Thursday night and Nick might be out for a while, and you said, is Carson going to be cleared for week one? 50-50 close, whatever you want to call it, 60-40. There was a chance that Nate Sudfeld could have been the opening day starter. And you know what? It would have been difficult, but I'm not saying the Eagles are going to flat out lose that game. Mm-hmm. I compared it to when Tom Brady was suspended, Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, and the Patriots went out and won with Jacoby Brissett. That would be a similar situation. That's how deep this team is at that position. Everything would be difficult, but they can go out and win a football game or two with Nate Sudfeld.
John, you mentioned Big V earlier, so he struggled as a replacement for Lane Johnson when he came in for him. Last year, he stepped up for Jason Peters, and now Thursday night, he struggled mightily in the game against the Patriots. So who is this guy? What should we expect from him moving forward?
Did I hear him say, by the way, that he kind of admitted that he has a Super Bowl hangover?
No, he admitted he wasn't ready. He wasn't prepared, mentally prepared. And, hey, he stood up, and he was very good about it. He didn't hide. He talked about it. He was very honest. He said it's unacceptable. Even I kind of turned him in the direction that it's just preseason. He said that's not an excuse. I got to protect the quarterback. He just had a bad game. So I I don't know if you can call it a Super Bowl hangover as much as I do believe in that preseason. It's tough for these guys to get up for these games. I mean, they won't admit it, but it's common sense. I mean, you watch them, you're not entertained as a fan. It's sort of a necessary evil for these guys, especially the proven guys. And Vitai's not Jason Peters or Lane Johnson, but he's a proven part of this team now. He's one of the better swing tackles in football. It's not like he's fighting for a roster spot. It's tough for these guys to get up for these games like it's a regular season game. That's just human nature.
Yeah. Speaking of guys battling for roster spots, let's go over a couple real quick. Shelton Gibson, he's having a great season, preseason as a receiver, but also as a returner. Do you see that Shelton Gibson has now put himself in position that he is a lock to make this team?
Yeah, I think he is. He's kind of surpassed, really, Mac Hollins as a receiver in this preseason, and not just in the games. He's had better practices. He's been consistently better. He's a big part of the special teams. Dave Phipps kind of admitted that the original plan was that Darren Sproles would do both, but now he's rethinking it, and he said the kickoff, now that he looks at it, is not as different as he thought it would be. So I think Shelton's going to be the kickoff returner.
Yeah.
And he's big on coverage teams as well. So, yeah, he's a guy who went from probably shouldn't making this team last year, and the Eagles only kept him because he was a draft pick, to a guy who doesn't even have to worry about cut-down day this time around.
And then I know Pumphrey's another guy that a lot of people are talking about. The running back situation is very interesting. Jones, Pumphrey, Adams is a guy that people like, but he's been banged up. Smallwood, kind of give us the skinny on the running back spot.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's out. Today, Ajayi, Corey Clement, Donnell Pumphrey, Josh Adams all didn't practice. So, you know, I joked the best thing that happened to Donnell in New England was the fact that he didn't play because Wendell Smallwood and Matt Jones were so bad. He actually went up the rung a little bit just because those guys performed so poorly, especially Matt Jones. But he's got to get on the field. Mike Gross said that today, basically admitted it. I mean, at some point, he's got to prove himself, and somehow – he's got to get back on the field. Problem is, Doug Peterson said on Sunday that he doesn't think he's going to be back this week. That's the game. That's the dress rehearsal game. So he's going to miss another preseason game. And all you have is week 4, which is meaningless. I don't know if he can dig himself out of that hole. And the only reason I think it's relevant to discuss Donnell Pumphrey is because the other guys have been so bad.
John, staying on topic with all these guys dealing with injuries, Brandon Graham coming off the PUP list. What's the timeline looking like for him?
Week 1.
Week 1.
You'll notice anyone of value, Carson Wentz, Brandon Graham, Alshon Jeffrey, even Jason Peters, Darren Sproles, who Doug admitted he doesn't need to see him in the preseason. Everything's week 1. I've talked about it a lot. That's what the NFL is now. You got to get these guys healthy. It's more important than having them out there in the preseason. Brandon's back at practice, so he's on line for week 1. He's going to start out limited, but you're not going to see him in Cleveland, certainly, and you're certainly not going to see him in week 4 preseason. So there's going to be a lot of guys like that. Alshon's going to be in that category. Carson's going to be in that category.
Right.
So you might see some sloppiness early in the season.
Right. That's what was going to be my next question. Is that an issue, though? I mean, we're just chalking it up to all these guys are going to just show up week 1. Should we expect a slow start to this season?
Yeah, I would. But I think I told you last week, Ryan, I said a lot of other teams go about it this way as well.
Right.
So I think as you look across the league, now you see week 1 and week 2. In a lot of ways, it's like the old previous CBA. They're like the preseason games, and you're going to see some sloppiness. You're going to see guys who aren't in the best condition to go out there and play 60 plays. And they work their way up to it. But, as I said, the Eagles aren't the only team. There's a lot of other teams that go about it the same way and are going to go through that same sloppy period.
John McMullen, today Jim Schwartz was asked about the frustration among the players about the new rules. We heard from the players a little bit. Schwartz is a guy who sometimes he tells you like it is. He went pretty deep today into the new rules. What did he have to say about the frustrations?
Well, the players are incredibly frustrated. The fans are frustrated. The coaches, for the most part, have sort of taken the tack that, there's that old cliche in football, control what you can control. There's nothing they can do about it. So most of them, Doug Peterson, Jim today, are tempered about it. They don't like the rule, though, behind the scenes. Kyle Shanahan is one coach who actually came out today and kind of ripped it, said it's ridiculous. But I think everybody knows it is. But this league is too far down the path. They're loath to admit mistakes. So this is what we're going to see. And I think the hope from the players and the coaches' standpoint is that the referees scale back in the regular season. And that's really what they're hoping on. That's what they're hoping for. Mm-hmm. Because – and I think it was Harrison Smith who got asked, do you fear that this is going to cost you games? And he said, I don't fear it. I know it. And so I advocate that fans take that approach, control what you can control. Otherwise, you're going to be very, very upset. Well, it will cost the Eagles a game, and you hope it evens out.
Some of the videos, that were going around on social media this weekend, I mean, the one with the Vikings game, that was just outrageous. And that goes into the discretion of the officials, and maybe he got it wrong. I mean, maybe he's just he could, but that's the video that is sparking the conversation, which makes it look really bad.
Well, and that's the thing. And Jim went this way as well. And I say it all the time, and I know I told you a lot, Mike. People are angry at the wrong group of people. It's not the officials. It's the legislation. They're just doing what they're told. And they're just sort of a pawn in this game. So they got to call what they're told to call. And when you put more discretion and give more judgment calls to what already is a really, really difficult sport to officiate, no good can come of it.
What is your take? I wasn't here last week. If the guys asked you this, I apologize. But Diopoulos was on with the guys on Thursday, and he suggested using replay on those type of plays, right, Ryan? I mean, if you throw the flag on that play, and I've said this before, you throw the flag on the play to at least be able to go back and say, okay, I threw it for safety concerns, but the hit was legal, so we're going to pull the flag.
Yeah, and every year the officials talk to us. They talk to the media. They show us a video, and they explain the new rules and the things that are going to be points of emphasis. And I asked that exact question to Ron Perlman. He's a line judge. He was the one who was talking to us. I said, is there going to be replays? There going to be an ability to look at something that is a really bad call and overturn it. And no. If they throw the flag, it's going to be 15 yards. Now, they can look at both ways. If it comes down to an ejection, they can look at it and they can overturn it. Or if it's worse than they thought, they can actually eject a player. But if that flag goes down, good call, bad call, indifferent, it's 15 yards.
John McMullen. Follow him on Twitter at JF McMullen as the Eagles getting ready for the Cleveland Browns, kind of the last dress rehearsal before you'll see nobody play against the Jets in week number 4. John, take care, my friend.
Hey, thank you, guys.